I'm Eva Oh, and this is the Teakink podcast. I've been a dominatrix since 2011, and I would like to spill the tea on my life. Thank you for listening.
Hello, welcome back to the Teakink podcast. This time in a corner of Singapore called Project X with Vanessa. What are you doing now for Project X? What's your title?
I'm still the executive director of Project X, yes.
Yes, we got in touch, I think, just before COVID, right?
Yes.
I was coming back after my burnout and I needed advice, and you were very kind to give me many bits and pieces. I don't know if you remember. But
oh, I don't.
Yeah, that was long. That's how we met, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, but you were in a very large house in Little India at that point in time, and you also had an office in Orchard Tower. That's like, it was an outreach center. So what is Project X?
Okay.
Why are you helping people like me come back from a burnout or however?
So Project X is a sex worker rights organization in Singapore. We've been around since 2008. So we're about 17 years old this year.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a really long time.
Have you been there the whole...
No.
Okay.
So I've joined in 2011. And I think the original goals of the organization was to render support to people working in the sex industry in Singapore. And I think we still uphold that goal. I think there's a thriving sex industry in Singapore, and some parts of it are acknowledged by the government. And we feel like if there is a sex worker community in Singapore, then there should be an organization that renders support. So we actually get a lot of inspiration from, say, in the Netherlands, there is a sex worker center right in the middle of the red light district. And that's kind of what we're trying to be here, like a labor union maybe for sex workers, but unions are very tricky in Singapore. They don't quite exist. But something like that.
Okay. And what does this non-labor union do?
Exactly. So I mean the original goal of the organization, or sorry, not the original goal, but what I focus a lot of my energies on is doing casework. So when people, when sex workers run into, say, abusive clients or meet somebody who have taken away their rights, how can they access the justice service system in Singapore? So like if a client doesn't pay them or a client sexually assaults them, what are the next steps? Because the law is very gray in Singapore. And so our goal is to help people navigate the law such that either they can get back some sense of justice or they can get some closure to what has happened. As an organization, how we survive is that we do a lot of sexual health programs. So that's globally, that's where we get our funding from. We do outreach to sex workers in various red light districts. We distribute condoms. We provide free testing, HIV, chlamydia, gonorrhea, syphilis. And so we want to make sure that people who need access to such testing services do get such access to testing services. So that's the bulk of the work that we do. We do have a social worker now. The first, we've been fighting to get a social worker in our team for the last 5 years. And we finally got a social worker.
Why has it been a fight?
It was very hard to convince people that sex workers needed a dedicated social worker. They didn't believe that sex workers couldn't access mainstream social services. And so it was a lot of our work was trying to convince them, but sex workers are marginalized in society, and because of the legal gray area that they exist in, many might be afraid to tell a social worker what they're doing for a living, for fear that they might get incarcerated because of that.
What is the legal gray area?
So sex work in and of itself is not criminalized, but many sex work related activities are. So living on the earnings of a sex worker, pimping.
What about a sex worker themselves? Can they live off of the earnings of themselves as a sex worker?
They can. They can. But
like a father living in the same household, maybe.
Right.
Wow.
Father, boyfriend as well might be a bit problematic also. You cannot run a brothel in Singapore by the law. You cannot be involved in sort of the recruitment process, getting workers in and sort of facilitating clients for sex workers. All those kinds of activities are criminalized. Sort of using internet services to advertise sex work is in another legal gray area. If you're living off the earnings of sex workers using an internet platform, you're also considered to have committed a crime.
Wow.
Yeah, and migrant sex workers are considered prohibited migrants under the Immigration Act. So yeah, it's a lot. And sex workers do routinely get policed, even if they don't get charged in court. Many workers we know have just been taken back to the station just to be questioned and to be detained overnight, for example, and have their phones searched, their computers searched, but then they get released after that. So even if they're not personally criminalized, they do get surveilled a lot. And so there's this sense that it's not safe out there. And so we really had to convince people that that is a barrier to access services, whether social services, health services, or justice services.
And then it's also like when you go to do these services, when I go to see a doctor and they ask what you do for work, and then
deep breath.
Question.
What do you say now?
I mean, I just go to the sex worker clinic.
Oh, okay.
And I'm even asking them things about like vaccines and stuff, you know, nothing to do with sex. Just because it's easier to speak to health service staff that you don't have to explain all of that stuff to. Because I don't really lie, and so people start asking questions, and then you tell them, and then they ask if you're being abused and all of these things. It's one thing if it's part of this protocol that you're really used to at the sex worker clinic, and they can empathize with you and understand which questions, what to ask, and just not let things be a big deal. But now we're in like a therapy session at the doctor's and with like some guy, and I'm just really not interested to go down this route. And I just came in for a vaccine.
Right.
You know, so it's just, it even when I'm not going in for anything to do with my work, I feel the weight of their potential judgment ahead of me, and I just cannot be bothered.
I think many similar experiences.
It's just
of
crazy
workers.
that people don't understand that.
Correct.
That we're not only dealing with the law, which may be a gray area in some countries, but with the prejudice of the person in front of me. It's just...
There's a lot of convincing to do. People are just like, what do you mean you don't dare to? Just go. I'm like, it's so blind, right? You're blind to the privileges that you have had, that you feel like it's so easy to just walk into a clinic, that you are able to pass and you don't have people questioning you. But I think if you live somewhat outside the norm, you'll be subjected to a lot of these questionings.
And you end up like censoring yourself also. Like you censor yourself away from spaces, and it shouldn't be like that, but it's like unfortunately the past history that you carry with you.
Correct.
But Project X, I feel like you've done so many things outside of only the health testing. But you, for example, have, if you're watching on video, released recently an anthology, which is it's come out of a writing project, right?
That's right. It's been a 2-year journey to put this book together. We started out with a small seed funding from Stigma to run writing workshops. So we got a few authors in Singapore to run 3 workshops with a group of workers. From there, this year we just got another grant to put together a book. And so we were like, hey, we get those writings as well as we added a couple of new pieces into the anthology. So it's really great because it's not just nonfiction, it's actually mixed in with some fictional pieces and then some that are sort of bordering fiction and nonfiction. We've got poetry, we've got artwork. So I think it really broadens people's perspectives of sex workers, right? I think there's a lot of nonfiction out there, which is great. I think I was just after publishing this, I read this Working Guys. I don't know if you come across it. It's about trans male sex workers. And so powerful of an anthology, but all of it was on nonfiction, and it was personal essays. So yeah, ours would be more. There's a little bit more creative writing in here, which I think is really interesting.
It was really fun.
Yeah,
I got to review it.
Yeah.
What do you call it? Is it like blurb or something?
I think it's called a blurb. Yeah.
My blurb made the inside cover.
Yes, it's a great one.
Yeah. I floated in and out of the Project X's way over the years. I guess I partially grew up here, so maybe it was. And also, like I think how I found you was I did my internship. At a sex worker org in Perth, Australia, and part of my things to keep me busy was to maybe just look up things in the region.
Okay.
In Australia. Yeah. And I found you through NSWP.
Yes.
Yeah. And I was shocked because, I grew up here, I know it pretty well, and I just thought, hang on. I mean, obviously there's sex workers everywhere, but there's even an org that really has themselves together that are helping us there. It just feels like so conservative to the point that people don't want to engage. And that makes it like obvious that there needs to be an org. But I just didn't expect to find one. I didn't think anybody would care. Like Singaporeans would care to do that. I think they would want to pretend it didn't exist.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people really do want to pretend it doesn't exist, but then, I think I'm very stubborn.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, we do exist. And
yeah. How long have you been with the org then?
Since 2011, so it would be 13, 14 years now. A really long time, my entire 20s. Going to be my entire 30s soon if I continue.
That's when I started in the industry.
Oh, you started in 2011 also. Okay, so we're like parallel. Yeah.
Amazing.
How does it feel like to be 13 years in the industry?
14 years now. I feel very comfortable. Yeah. It's the thing that I've done the longest, and I'm not gonna stop either.
Yeah.
It's interesting to realize that I'm one of the older ones now.
Okay.
Because people don't really stick around the job. It's a difficult job, right?
Yes.
You're not only dealing with the job, which is people, which is difficult, but you're dealing with the stigma, which is the worst part of the job, really. And I feel like I've overcome a lot of that. I still have to suffer, the banking issues and all this kind of thing.
Yep.
But for the most part, I feel like I've been through the heavy lifting of dealing with my own internalized stigma and how to talk to people about the job. So I think I'm quite proud of how much I've slugged it out and made something of it.
So interesting. I also feel like people always ask me like, why have I been here for so long? Like, why wouldn't you like go try something else? Or when it gets difficult, why not, just go somewhere else? And I think it's like, if I've done something for such a long time, you just get good at it. And then you just know how to get things done. And so it doesn't make sense to want to go somewhere else. I am now also feeling like I'm older than a lot of people. Like interns are still coming in at 18, 19, 20. The workers that I meet also, like they're in their early 20s, mid 20s. And definitely, my back aches are starting. Got cholesterol problems.
You can take a pill for that.
Yeah, the doctor didn't want to give me a pill. He's like, go exercise. I'm like, okay, I will. But yeah, I still struggle with finance. I think the hallmark of a good organization is that you really have to just get your finances like done properly. You don't want people to come after you for like bad governance issues.
Yeah. So what is the structure of Project X like these days?
We have a core team of 6 full-time staff now. It fluctuates sort of between 4 to 6 full-time staff. So half our team are still made up of sex workers. And we also have a governing board. Our board is more advisory board. So I think some boards tend to be a lot more involved, but ours is more advisory. So we just get people from academia, from lawyers, accountants. So we will approach them for like governance issues. So that's kind of the makeup right now.
And what is the state of sex work in Singapore at the moment?
It's very interesting. I think the laws hasn't changed. In fact, me being here for 13 years, I noticed that the law has strengthened in some parts to criminalize some aspects of sex work. There's a lot more worry about sex work being online nowadays. So the law is also, or rather law enforcement tend to really want to clamp down on sex workers who advertise online. But at the same time, I mean, there are still the licensed brothels in Singapore, right? In Geylang, here in Little India, there are still about 800 licensed brothels. OnlyFans is still thriving as a platform. OnlyFans content creators also getting mainstream sponsorships.
Yeah, wasn't it? Weren't people going to jail for having OnlyFans at some point?
Yeah. So Titus went to jail a couple years ago now, maybe 3-4 years ago. He went to jail. He was the first and last content creator to be jailed. It was a huge uproar. Like lots of people were really paranoid. There were a lot of content creators who had their homes raided. Right? They called us. I remember it was New Year's Eve. Actually, it was very clear.
God.
People were calling us, on New Year's Eve, being like, Titus got arrested, went to jail, and I got a phone call from the police. Police showed up at my door and wanted my phone and my laptop. So it was actually quite a very scary period of time for many content creators. But I think they realized that it's not in the public interest to go after OF creators. Because one of the biggest arguments that were going on at that time was that it's paywalled, right? It's not like the content is available for everybody. So if it's paywalled, then why are they being charged for something that is not harming anybody but the person paying for it? Not that it's harming the person paying for it, but
but there's a lot of steps.
Yeah, exactly. And I think they realized that it was a mistake. Not that they will ever admit it. And so now OF content creators are just free to...
Because there must be thousands of them here.
Yeah, I don't know what the scene is like.
Not tens of thousands, I would think. Of varying sizes.
But a lot of people were also freaking out because the law, in the way it was written, would also criminalize people who were just
making
sexting
sexy photos.
Their boyfriends or girlfriends.
I've read that
law.
Did they keep that law?
No, it's the same one that Titus got in trouble with, right? It was like creating obscene materials. You can't do that in your own home in Singapore, technically. Correct. And so people were like, hang on a second. If I'm just like sending nudes to my
boyfriend... Even if you're not sending, if you're just creating, if you're just taking a nude photo of yourself...
Correct.
Because you like it.
Yes.
That is illegal, technically.
Correct. So people were like, hang on a second. And it just doesn't make sense to put people in jail for that. And I think that's why they stopped. But if you like did it maliciously, so if like it's leaked nudes, or if it's like revenge porn, then
or hidden camera or something.
Hidden camera voyeurisms, yes. Then I think they will use that law for those purposes now, which is a lot more better way of using the law.
I mean, that you could write a very different law for that, but
correct,
that's like a consent issue.
Correct.
Yeah, but anyway.
It's a very old law. That's the problem. Nobody has updated this law in like 3 decades or something.
Yeah, there's some interesting laws around the term vulgarity in this country.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Oh.
Maybe that's something for an interview with a Singaporean legislator at some point. Yeah. How closely do you work actually with government or legislators or?
Yeah. So we always try to, our goal is some level of decriminalization, right? Or if not decriminalization, some level of protection for workers. Whatever form that might look like, we're sort of open to discussion. So yeah, we do work with a couple of members of parliament. We try to tell them to include sex worker voices whenever possible, like during parliamentary sittings. When the Women's Charter, the law that affected a lot of sex workers, were amended in 2019 and 2016, we made sure that, we met with legislators and tell them these are the concerns of sex workers, and to get those voices heard in Parliament. Nothing concrete came out of it, but at least it's codified that sex worker voices are now in like the Hansard, so you could hear some of those stories in Parliament.
What's the Women's Charter?
So that's the one that the Women's Charter was started in 1960 to actually outlaw polygamy.
Okay.
Yeah, at that point, only men could take multiple wives, right? Which is unfair. So but that's not why the Women's Charter. So yeah, Women's Charter was enacted to end polygamy in Singapore, and at the same time, it had an entire section on the traffic in women. And that's the part that says you cannot own a brothel, you cannot hire women for sex work, you cannot live on the earnings of sex workers, you cannot have commercial sex with a minor under 18.
Okay.
Yeah, so like the legal age of consent for a commercial sex worker would be 18. But the legal age of consent for sex is 16.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's what the Women's Charter codifies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you have numbers on how many workers are in Singapore now?
It's a tricky one, right? I think the only research paper that has come out by the National University of Singapore estimates that there are about 8,000 sex workers in Singapore, but
no. What? At the Hyatt?
Correct. So I think I would read the number as 8,000 at any one point in time. So I feel like every month there'll be new 8,000 workers. I feel like that's more accurate way of reading.
I don't know. It feels like too little, but okay.
Yeah. I don't know. I really don't know how to quantify
Well, do you work with a lot of locals or like immigrants or?
I mean, it's easiest to reach out to locals, but the fact is that migrants do make up the majority of the industry. Like in the licensed brothels, 100% all migrants right now. There used to be some locals, but all the locals have quit.
Okay. What happened there?
I think nobody wants to give 50% of their earnings. Like locals don't want to do that. I think foreigners don't mind. Because they have somewhere to stay, someone to take care of them.
Exchange rates.
Yeah. But locals are like, nah. 50% is too steep of a cut.
And then they'll do it on their own?
They'll do it on their own. Yeah. But we do try our best to reach out to migrants because we feel like they are the ones who would struggle the most with sort of access to justice, access to healthcare services, and would get easily exploited by whomever is the one who hires them. Because migrants would often come with some kind of agent or some kind of boss figure who would tell them what to do in Singapore, take some kind of cut from them. We are trying our best to outreach to migrants, but the problem is always language. Language is...
How many languages do you have to operate in?
Yeah, so a lot of people speak Vietnamese, Thai, we've got Indonesians, we have... Filipinos are great because they can speak English. But we have a lot of Indian nationals as well, and Indian nationals speak all kinds of languages as well. So we have Telugu speakers, Tamil speakers, Hindi speakers, Malayalam speakers as well. So that would be some of the challenges.
Okay. Okay. And when you're working with locals, that is mostly in English or?
English, Chinese also, Chinese
Okay,
Mandarin as well.
Mm-hmm.
Malay also.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, we have people who would be more comfortable in their mother tongue.
Mm-mm.
Tamil as well.
Okay.
Yeah, so a lot of languages.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now you're just in one location, right?
Correct.
And then you do outreach?
Correct.
Okay. How often are you doing outreach?
4 days a week.
Wow.
We have 3 teams, outreach teams that would outreach to different locations 4 days a week.
And is it street-based stuff or?
All. So we street-based workers, massage-based workers, sometimes even apartment-based workers, depending on whether or not we're friends with them. Online workers as well. We have someone just going on
literally outreaching.
Yeah, being like, "Hi, have you heard of Project X?" Yeah, being on the various websites.
Are people quite welcoming?
Oh no! Like if you speak to our online outreach girl, she'd be like, every 5 minutes she'd be like, "I got blocked again," because people just like report spam, right?
Oh, okay.
Or they think that we're lying.
Yeah.
Like you, right? Actually, a lot of people don't believe that we are real.
Yeah.
They don't believe that there will be such an organization in Singapore. So they're like, huh? And then they just block us.
Yeah. Yeah, you just imagine that you're on your own.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It took me years to realize that I could reach out to people. And I mean, I started in Australia, which it's decrim in New South Wales, right?
Yeah.
And I had OH&S posters in the brothel and everything.
Yeah.
But even then, and I knew about Scarlet Alliance and all that, but even then, I went to like one workshop. I didn't become a member until much later. I didn't think about sitting on a board. I didn't think about going to... You just don't... I think, you live in this world prior to sex work where you're kind of isolated and you're in this privileged space of course I have rights. And then after a while, when you suffer the bank shutdown or not being able to go to certain things because your friends' wives don't want you there, and then you start to realize your reality and why that is. And you're like, oh, okay, so I do need to join the community and do something about this because it's not right. And so I think that's like, I just was like, I'm working and I'm working on my own independently, and that's it, when actually you don't exist in a vacuum and it's very hard. Yeah. A lot of workers in Singapore work in a vacuum. It's so hard to get people to come out of their shell. People will be like, I'm only going to talk to you, nobody else is going to be in the office, or I don't want to come down to the office because I don't want anyone to see me. It's really interesting that you decided that. Because it was work. It was a means to pay rent and like get things done. That was what I was doing it for. I didn't understand all of the societal implications until I was in it, which was stupid. Like ignorant. But I got there eventually. Yeah.
Are you sitting on a board now?
No, but I go to meetings.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess there's some more unofficial sort of setups that I'm a part of.
Okay. You should. I'll plug you in some networks. Maybe you can sit on some boards.
I sit in on some of your meetings also sometimes.
Yes. That's right. Sorry, they're not very well organized sometimes.
Oh no, it's okay.
It's just chaotic sometimes.
I'm not here all the time anyway. But what are things that you would hope for the state of Singapore, I guess even in general?
I mean, I definitely hope that one thing that we're really working towards is the recognition of us as a legitimate organization, right? I think a lot of people, especially when it was a lot younger as an organization, people like, huh, what are y'all? Is this even real? Is this legit? And I think over the years, with sort of funding coming in now, with publishing a book, we've got a few peer-reviewed journal articles published as well, and we're getting featured in some of the mainstream media. I think just getting that recognition that we're real and that what we're doing is important to Singapore as a society. I think that's something, maybe a sort of a short to medium term goal that we still have. Because if people can recognize that we are legitimate, then sex workers can also recognize that we are legitimate. Because that's what people do, right? They're like, we're from Project X, and then they would just go and Google or they would check out social media. And we want to come across as legitimate. I mean, then the longer term goal would be some form of protection, right? To stop hearing the police tell sex workers, oh, do you know that commercial sex is illegal in Singapore? Because that's what the police are still saying to sex workers. And to have more sensitivity when treating sex workers who sort of have brushes with the law. I think that's something we absolutely want to see. I would like to see sort of decriminalization of sex work, so that involves removing the Immigration Act article that says sex workers are prohibited migrants, because I don't think it's a good law. Definitely would like to see sort of advertising on the internet not be something that is criminalized. I like to see that, people stop calling sex work a vice. So that's what the media reaches for right now. That vice raids around Singapore. That's how they frame it.
What else are vice?
Gambling. Contraband cigarettes are vices. Arguably drugs are also vice, but the department is a whole other department. So, but those catching sex workers are from the vice department.
Oh, there's an actual department called the vice department.
So they used to be called anti-vice.
Okay.
But they rebranded. I don't know how long ago they rebranded, but they're called the Specialized Crime Branch now.
Okay.
But everyone on the streets still calls them.
So I guess
the anti-vice department.
Trafficking could be under that.
They are, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but not sex work.
Both. Like
they put sex work under that?
Yeah. So trafficking is a very interesting concept in Singapore. The state doesn't actually believe very strongly that human trafficking happens here on a large scale. Okay. They believe there might be like one or two here and there.
One or two?
Yeah. But they don't believe that it's a large scale problem. And they believe that actually a lot of sex workers in Singapore are here willingly. So that's their bias. And when the Member of Parliament passed this law or proposed this law, the anti-human trafficking law in Singapore, he was very clear that he didn't want sex workers to scam the system for benefits by claiming to have been forced into the trade. So it's a very interesting perspective, because it's very different from what's happening in Europe, right? Yeah. In Europe, there's a whole Nordic model stuff going on. But here, it's the other way around. We don't want sex workers to try and scam us. Yeah, that they're victims when they're actually not.
What about like domestic workers or like the construction workers? Do they use the same language?
No, absolutely not. I think so. With domestic workers, one of the issues that are being spotlighted recently is that if the employers are unhappy or would just call the police on their domestic workers and say, oh yeah, she stole something from me, right? And then police will have to act on those, and then sort of domestic workers will have to undergo the entire interrogation process. So the stigma for domestic workers is that they're thieves, like they would steal from you.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, so there's a lot of this villainizing of
the other,
exactly. Yeah.
Singapore.
Welcome back.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's really very hard. I mean, one of the big cases that happened with Party Liani, right? She was a domestic worker for this family. Can't remember the details, but like a really wealthy family. Dad is in high places, and they accused her of stealing, but she was acquitted. And they found no evidence, and then they found that there was some level of trying to sabotage her. But But yeah, nothing happened to the family after that. I don't think so. But yeah, it was one of the biggest cases.
And they were free to hire more people.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot that can still be done.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
On a relational level. I think that, whenever I come back, I am very grateful to feel safe on a walking on the street level. But at the same time, you remember actually there's a lot of interpersonal and like societal, like relational issues that people just want to pretend doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And it comes out in things like even just abuse of domestic workers. Yeah. And so there's I wonder how it will get to that point, because it's quite hard to have those conversations.
Yeah, super.
Yeah. People don't really want to do them even on a personal level, and you're not allowed to do them on a wider level.
Yeah.
There
are still just a handful of organizations out there working on these issues.
Yeah. But thank you for being one of them.
Yeah.
Yes, and thank you for now being around for 14 years. Yeah. I don't think you're going anywhere. I'll see you in another 14, because I'm also not really going anywhere. But thank you.
Thank you.
In another 14 years. Till then.